Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller. Today is July 21st, and this is Alaska Weather, brought to you by the National Weather Service and our partners here at KAKM. As always, you can keep up to date on our website, arh.noaa.gov. Our weather info line is 24/7, and that is 1-800-472-0391. You can always find the latest information on your website, weather.gov/Alaska, for all of the state. Also look for us on Facebook for social media updates at NWS Alaska, and that'll give you the Fairbanks, Juneau, and Anchorage offices. And you can find us on Twitter using the hashtag AKwx, and our call is at NWS Alaska, our handle. And also you can find some segments and this show later on tonight on YouTube. Use the channel AKwx TV, Alaska Weather TV. So let's dive into it tonight. We'll start off with our fire danger, and as you can see here, probably haven't seen this map for a few days, but things have been drying out in some portions of the state, while there has been a lot of moisture and onshore flow for portions of south central and some rain for the interior locations. We still, right north of the Alaska Range, have high fire danger, and that basically stretches from the Tanana Valley all the way out through the Seward Peninsula. And we still have several fires burning up there. Right now, the state stands at 4.78 million acres burned as of this morning's situational report. So pretty significant, well ahead of any other states in the 50. And as you can see here in the Copper River Basin, we do have extreme fire danger. This area has been drying for the past several days, as much as a week now. And with that, we have seen fire danger slowly creep up. The fuels have dried out once again. They have not had much rainfall in the past several days, and so therefore we have extreme fire danger in that area. And then through South Central, we do have high fire danger as well. Not any abundant rainfall really since last Friday, and we're going on several days of warm and dry now, so fire danger has crept back up into the high category. Let's take a look at our satellite and see what's coming our way from the Bering out towards the west coast. Here we have one weakening area of low pressure that is slowly spinning itself out over the Bering Sea. And then down here is where we see our more active jet stream moving from southwest off to the northeast through Dutch Harbor. Some remnants of former typhoon activity down here in the West Pacific, and that moisture is basically being caught up in the storm track and brought in towards the Bering Sea. Taking a look at that loop one more time. Here we see our weakening counterclockwise rotation around the low, and then this is where we expect development over the next 12 to 24 hours in this area here, as we see the jet stream providing the upper level energy that we would need to create any new systems. Taking a look a little bit closer to the mainland now. You can see here, that's where we see that system that we were talking about. High clouds, and the more moisture makes these a little bit brighter in the white on this visible satellite. And there we have our developing system right just to the west of Unalaska. Not a terribly strong system, but nonetheless a developing area of low pressure. And then our weakening area of low pressure over the Bering Sea. Out towards the Gulf of Alaska, you can see here some moisture and a weakening boundary that basically stretches across much of southwest Alaska and then down through the Gulf of Alaska. And that area is falling apart, bringing just some light showers to southwest Alaska and the Kenai Peninsula. Out over the eastern Gulf, we do have some moisture, but mainly low-level clouds and marine stratus, not seeing much in the way of moisture making it onshore for southeast Alaska today. Let's take look at that loop one more time. You can see here, for the most part, pretty clear skies, just some high clouds passing through south central. We did have some showers fire along the mountains this afternoon for many areas of the interior and into the Copper River Basin. Some of those we could see isolated thunderstorms, but for the most part the thunderstorms are remaining off east of the Alcan border, and thus we just have the onshore, just the showers and then onshore flow for the outskirts of the Panhandle. Let's take a look at today's weather map then. Here's that weakening frontal boundary that I alluded to, stretched out basically from the Central Gulf all the way back to this low pressure system way out from the Bering Sea, and with that we have seen this area of light showers and rain starting to fall apart right here over the mainland. So just a few showers picked up by the Bethel and the Kenai radar this morning. We do see some patchy fog from the Pribilofs up towards the southwest portion of the coast and Bristol Bay area. Warm air being pushed up into this area has created some patchy fog for areas like Bethel and King Salmon. And then here's our area of low pressure that is developing along that frontal boundary, along that upper level jet, and we will see this area start to increase in strength and a little bit in its expansiveness as that rain starts to make its way into the eastern Aleutians and eventually the Alaska Peninsula. Out towards the Gulf of Alaska, here's this little break that we'll see start to work into south central tomorrow after these high clouds move out, and then we'll start to see this next system move in late tomorrow night and into Thursday. But before we get there, over towards the Gulf of Alaska and southeast Alaska, we do have this area of rain that will eventually make its way westward and finally reach that area. And then our showers over the mainland for the interior and some fog up along the Arctic coast. You will notice that being a theme with a very strong high pressure at 1029 just off the map there, and that will help to keep things very stable and allow that marine stratus to sink down to the surface in the form of fog, reducing visibility. We do also have some thunderstorms associated with this area of low pressure off towards Canada, and that will remain pretty much semi-permanent throughout the forecast. Will slowly work its way to the east, or excuse me, to the west, helping to increase the chances of thunderstorms each day. So on into tonight's forecast, there we see that area of low pressure now down to 1,008 millibars, starting to slide a little bit farther to the north and east. Here's that break that we should see later on developing in the form of diminishing clouds. We'll see this break start to work its way in to the Kenai Peninsula and the Cook Inlet region as we go into the overnight hours. Do expect with the clear skies a little bit of patchy fog here in the Cook Inlet region. Showers and thunderstorms will taper off and just become mainly showers and then eventually subside completely by tomorrow morning. Our area of low pressure out towards the Bering Sea continues to weaken, but still bringing that onshore flow, keeping things rather moist and that fog in the forecast for much of southwest Alaska. A little bit denser fog there along the Arctic coast, courtesy of this area of high pressure, keeping areas of fog up from Dead Horse all the way over to Barrow, and that again will not change. A little patchy fog and patchy smoke expected tonight. No advisories out for those right now, but we do see the potential for those fires to continue to produce limited visibility because of the smoke, mainly just in the 3 to 5 mile range, but could be a little bit of a hindrance. And then as we step off into to the Gulf of Alaska, there is that weakening boundary, not really expected to bring a whole lot of precipitation just yet into southeast Alaska. On into Wednesday then, there's our area of low pressure now down to 1,002 millibars. Again, continues to strengthen as it rides that upper level energy. And with that, we see the rain starting to work its way into Cook Inlet region and through much of southwest Alaska. Our thermal trough here that is caused by the warm summer afternoons is once again going to allow thunderstorms to fire throughout much of the interior, mainly north of the Alaska range, but we could see a few isolated thunderstorms in the Copper River Basin, possibly as far south as the Talkeetna Mountains. That does not look real promising at this point. The fog and the smoke should burn off by early morning, and we should again have mostly sunny skies in the midday and then start to see those showers develop once again for the interior. Over southeast Alaska, again, a fairly nice day down there, just some partly cloudy conditions and dry as well as this thermal trough stays well inland of the Wrangell-St. Elias range and the coastal ranges. And we should see, besides the coastal locations, mostly clear skies for many places down there. On into Thursday now, our area of low pressure takes a turn as it drives through the Gulf of Alaska, moving away from northwest to southeast, and as it does so, it will continue to strengthen down to 995 millibars, and this is when we see the precipitation finally move into the Panhandle region. For Thursday, for South Central and much of the interior, we'll see wraparound flow, and that will bring us some showers and thunderstorms over the higher terrain and start to slowly dry things out for much of the Cook Inlet region. Our new area of low pressure slowly developing south and west of the Aleutian range, Aleutian chain, but don't expect that to be a player before the end of the week. And then our weakening system out here now at 1,008 millibars, continuing just to bring some warm, moist, patchy fog up into the Pribilofs in southwest Alaska. Let's take a look at temperatures now. As you can see here from much of southeast Alaska, we are in the mid 60s to even low 70s, 71 at Hoonah, 60 degrees at Sitka, and 62 at Yakutat. A little bit closer to south central, 64 degrees there at Cordova and as well at Valdez, and 73 at Gulkana. Up towards out towards southwest Alaska, we had king salmon come in at 55 and Dillingham at 59. For the most part, it was mid 50s for the mainland, and even some 60s as you got out towards the Alaska Peninsula, and then cooling off into the low 50s and even upper 40s for places like St. Paul. For the interior, we saw 73 degrees at 4 p.m. for Fairbanks, and generally about upper 60s to low 70s for much of the area in here. 67 degrees at McGrath, and as we got up towards Dead Horse, it was 54 degrees, 47 at Barrow. We saw 71 degrees at Kotzebue and 62 degrees at Nome. Looking at tonight's low temperatures, do expect anywhere from the low to mid 50s for much of southeast Alaska, mainly in the 55-degree range. As we get towards the drier and deeper valleys of the Copper River Basin, do expect temperatures to fall into the mid to upper 40s, some low 40s even along the Alcan border there where the skies will be clear. And then over towards south central, we have mainly low 50s and upper 40s expected, with still a fairly abundant amount of moisture in the atmosphere to help those nighttime temperatures to stay a little bit warmer. As we get towards the central portion of the state, we do see temperatures anywhere between the mid 50s to low 60s, and up towards the Brooks Range and the Arctic coast, anywhere between mid to upper 30s, and then eventually into the 40s, 50 degrees for lows tonight around the Seward Peninsula. Out towards the Aleutian Chain, expect mid to upper 40s for areas out there. Now on into tomorrow's high temperatures. Again, with fairly clear skies, we should see temperatures rebound quickly out over the southeast, and that'll bring us into the low to mid 60s. For the Copper River Basin, expect temperatures in the low to mid 70s, and over the interior, expect mid 70s for your highs tomorrow. For south central and southwest, anywhere between the upper 50s to low 60s for the Cook Inlet region, and then north of the Brooks Range, primarily in the upper 40s and low 50s. Along the west coast, it'll be generally in the 50s to upper 50s. And along the Aleutian Chain, expect anywhere between about 50 to 55 degrees for the most part. Now taking a look at tomorrow's flying weather, we do have a fairly widespread area of MVFR conditions. This area here is attributed to that system that we saw falling apart across south central. And this area here is from the residual moisture associated with that area of low pressure, helping to keep some stratus and some fog out there. A couple pockets of IFR also associated with that area, and then associated with this area creeping into southeast Alaska in the form of lower conditions, especially in the passes. Thunderstorms are in the forecast once again on the Alaska Range and stretching out towards the northwest portion of the state, and that fog will help to keep IFR conditions along the Arctic coast. So with that, Anaktuvik Pass will be VFR tomorrow. Adigan Pass also VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill will go from MVFR early due to that moisture and then become VFR. Rainy Pass will be MVFR and then become VFR as well. Windy Pass, we could see some thunderstorms on the south entrance, but we expect visual flight rules to be dominant there. Isabel, similar story with the thunderstorms on the south side of the Alaska Range. Mentasta expecting VFR conditions. And Tanita also VFR. Portage will go from VFR to MVFR later in the day with that next system approaching. And Chilkoot and White will go from MVFR to VFR. It should be very close to MVFR, but mostly VFR conditions there throughout the day. Now on into our freezing levels. Again, our coldest pocket is out here in the form of about 6,000 foot freezing levels, generally over the southwestern portion of the mainland and stretching out into the Bering Sea where our area of low pressure has been spinning for a while, climbing all the way up to 12,000 feet with that warmer air riding that jet stream up from the south into the north, and so climbing quickly. And then off into the Alcan border, we see about 8,000 foot freezing levels with most of the state between 8 and 10,000 feet. Taking a look at the icing tomorrow, we have generally above 8,000 and then down to as low as 6,000 feet, but generally just light isolated moderate icing associated with the decaying front and the developing front throughout much of southwest and into the Gulf. Over towards the western portion of your map here, we do have an area above 9,000 feet out towards the western Aleutians, just again light to isolated moderate. Taking a look at our jet stream now, it's pretty active just south of the state, diving in at about 90 to 100 knots, and then starting to link up with this jet, subtropical jet down here at about 110 knots, riding over this ridge, and then diving quickly down off the west coast of the continental United States at about 100 knots. So with that jet support, that's what we expect to see with that developing system there over southwest Alaska. Here's our 9,000-foot winds. Again, generally where we have this area of jet support is where we see our strongest winds between 30 and 35 knots, due westerly for the most part. And then as you get towards the mainland, expect pretty light flow, 10 to 20 knots as it comes around this area of low pressure here over the southwest. And then generally west-east flow, strongest down in the Gulf at about 40 knots. At 3,000 feet, very similar conditions with that cyclonic flow, counterclockwise flow. Strongest again south of this area of low pressure at about 40 knots and 35 as you get towards the southern portion of the Gulf. And finally, that brings us to our turbulence map. And again, where we saw those areas of stronger winds between 3,000 and 9,000 feet, generally moving from the west to the east, is where we expect our turbulence, just light, isolated, moderate below 8,000 feet. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with your marine forecast.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Gina and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska, Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Gina's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that that would be easier to travel with, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And welcome back to the show. Hope you enjoyed the segment there, and we will dive now into the marine forecast. Let's take a look at southeast Alaska for Wednesday. You can see up towards Lynn Canal, southerly flow increasing through the afternoon. Seas building to about 4 knots and winds topping out at about 4 feet and winds topping out at 20 knots. Down towards the southern portion of the inner passageway, a little bit more variable flow southeast and northwest, 10 to 15 knots and seas between 2 and 4 feet. Out over the open waters of the Gulf, expect generally west to southwest flow, 10 knots and seas on the order of about 5 to 6 feet. As we get into Thursday, things will be increasing a little bit, especially out over the open Gulf, where we have 25 knots out of the southeast towards the Yakutat, and generally southwest to southerly flow, 20 to 25 knots. Seas will be between 8 and 9 feet. Up towards Lynn Canal, seas building to 3 feet and winds out of the south at about 15 knots. And southeasterly winds towards Clarence Strait and Stevens Passage, 15 to 20 knots, seas between 3 and 4 feet. On into south central now, expect fairly light conditions for the most part as this area of weakening boundary falls apart over the area, but we do start to see our southwest winds pick up to about 30 knots southeast of Kodiak, and seas building to about 9 feet. Otherwise, generally 10 to 15 knots and anywhere between westerly flow near the Barrens, becoming southeast and southwest up towards the Cook Inlet region, southwest 20 knots and 5-foot seas towards Shelikof Strait. And on Thursday, here's where we see things pick up a little bit as that area of low pressure builds in and then starts to slide away, giving us easterly flow 15 to 25 knots just south of Prince William Sound, seas 2 feet in the Sound and 9 feet out over the open waters, and then becoming 25 to 30 knots, seas 8 to 11 feet near Kodiak Island. And then towards the Shelikof and Western Barrens area, we'll see 20 to 25 knots out of the west, seas between 5 and 6 feet, and 2 to 3 foot seas and 10 knots for Cook Inlet. And then into Alaska Peninsula for Wednesday, expect west to southwest flow, 20 to 30 knots, and anywhere between 7 to 8 foot seas north of the chain, becoming 11 foot seas south of the chain. On into Thursday, expect all that flow to shift out of the west, 25 to 30 knots, and seas between 8 and 10 feet. For the Aleutian Islands on Wednesday, expect generally southwest to westerly flow, 25 to 30 knots, and seas will be between 7 and 10 feet. And on Thursday, expect southwest flow dominating the entire area, generally 20 to 25 knots, and seas about 7 to 9 feet. Off towards the west coast, again, fairly calm conditions out there. Variable winds or southerly at 10 knots and 4 to 5 foot seas. A little bit farther south, expect 20 knots out of the west and southwest, seas at 7 feet. Then over on Thursday now, we're looking for more variable winds throughout the area, generally out of a westerly direction, 10 to 20 knots, and seas anywhere between 3 and 7 feet. For the Arctic coast, expect easterly flow on the northern side of the landmass and then becoming northeast as you get towards Cape Lisburne, and generally between 15 and 25 knots. Seas about 3 to 5 feet. On Thursday then, expect that similar flow out of the east and northeast, 20 to 25 knots, and seas anywhere between 4 to 6 feet and down to the Seward Peninsula at 2 feet. So let's recap tonight's forecast in the next couple days. There's our area of low pressure that is going to be our main player for the next several days. At 1,008 millibars, starts to spread rain into Kodiak Island. Showers and thunderstorms should diminish over the mainland as we go into the overnight hours, but we do expect those to reinvigorate once again on Wednesday as this area of lower pressure helps to trigger that activity in the afternoon once again. Looking towards this area of low pressure now, it's starting to creep a little bit further to the north and east towards Cook Inlet region at 1,002 millibars. And a generally nice day for southeast Alaska as we see dry conditions there on Wednesday. On into Thursday, we do expect our area of low pressure to now start to dive to the southeast, down to 995 millibars, spreading rain from basically the Valdez area all the way down through southeast Alaska. Thunderstorms will once again fire, but should be less widespread, mainly east of the Alcan border, but we could see a few strikes north of the Alaska Range on Thursday. And fog will continue for the Arctic coast and much of the west coast as this broad, light onshore flow continues. Thanks for watching. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.